Well, today, a 4-year journey comes to a close. In 2018, a new trilogy of Halloween films kicked off to bring this franchise back to its glory days, and the success of the first film even helped to rejuvenate the slasher genre itself. And now, we finally see how Halloween ends. What's going on, everybody, and welcome to my spoiler-free review of Halloween Ends. The day is finally here. The end is nigh. This is easily the most anticipated movie of the year for most horror fans. It was certainly one that I was most curious about, and for those that don't know my history with this trilogy, I had a very interesting experience with the fan base back in 2018 when I gave that film a 3.5 out of 5.
You didn't fucking loudmouth!
That's all that fucker does is cry!
I liked it, didn't love it. Over time, my thoughts hasn't changed too much on it. Kills, I was extremely disappointed by, but still got enough satisfaction out of it to give it 3 out of 5. And Halloween Ends is a movie that I just had no idea what to expect. With all of the early descriptions that they were giving after Kills dropped, that they had rewrote the script and they had created a time jump, and there was mention that COVID might play a part in the story at some point. Started to get to these rumors closer to the movie's release date about this secret character and them taking some gigantic wild swings with the story that nobody was going to expect. And so I tried to walk in as blind and with little to no expectations as possible. And all I can tell you without a doubt is that no matter what I liked and disliked in this film, there is a ton of people that are going to be pissed at what this movie does. And again, I need to reiterate, this will be completely spoiler-free. There is a ton of things in this movie that I'm not going to be able to describe in any detail whatsoever, so if you enjoyed this review and you want to eventually hear more in-depth thoughts from me, please hit that subscribe button, because I'm going to have a ton of ranking videos coming out over the next couple of weeks, and I would say by Monday at the latest, I'll have a full spoiler review of this film. We're going to do a live commentary, a live spoiler chat. We're going to be talking about this movie for the rest of this month. So essentially where we find ourselves at the beginning of Halloween Ends is that there has in fact been a 4-year time jump. As the first trailer showed you, Laurie Strode and her granddaughter is off trying to move on from the events of Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills. Michael has not been seen in 4 years. He's not been heard of. The killings have stopped, and things happen that bring all that back into the forefront. It's about all I can tell you. So starting off with the positives of Halloween Ends, I actually really liked what they did with Jamie Lee Curtis in this film. Now, my thoughts on this version of this character have been kind of mixed for this trilogy thus far. I felt like the first film was a bit too far with the Sarah Connor angle. I didn't quite buy into the level of trauma that they were exploring with that character. Just one night, 3 high school friends 40 years ago, and it still consumes every single second of her day. Didn't quite work for me. Then you get into Halloween Kills, and the dialogue just completely lets the character down in that movie, because every single thing that Laurie Strode is saying is so heavy-handed, so over the top, so like unnecessarily Shakespearean about Michael and evil, and it never sat well with me. Even on my most recent rewatch, I just cringe at most of the dialogue in that film. To me, she feels the most like a human character in Halloween Ends. She feels the most like the Laurie Strode that I know and love. She actually feels like somebody that can process what has gone on and move on like a fucking human being. And her interactions with her granddaughter, her interactions with Will Patton, her interactions with some of the townsfolk that aren't too friendly with her, she felt like a genuine, actual character. And I enjoyed what Jamie Lee Curtis brought to this, both in the dramatic sense as well as some moments of humor throughout the movie I wasn't expecting. And being that this movie has been sold and marketed entirely off of ends, it's ending, this is it, this is the swan song, this is the goodbye to fans, this is the last hurrah for this incarnation of the character, I'm glad that I got to enjoy my final moments with this character. And part of the reason why Laurie felt like so much more of a human character is because they toned down that ridiculous, over-the-top, heavy-handed dialogue that they've been shoving up our ass for 2 movies. They toned it way down in Halloween Ends, much to my gleeful surprise, because there was moments in 2018 that just, they completely fell on their face with me, and Kills especially, that whole fucking movie is painted with that dialogue, where it's so extreme, it's so ridiculous how they speak about Michael and evil in this town and trauma. They don't feel like human beings because nobody fucking talks that way. And so it was a very big step up for me that the people in this film, the people in Haddonfield, actually talked like humans for a change. One of my biggest fears walking into this movie was whether or not they're going to have the balls to actually end Halloween. Are they going to cop out? Are they going to tease things? Are they going to leave doors open? And again, without getting specific whatsoever, I was satisfied with the direction they decided to go. Halloween Ends does in fact take some gigantic swings. It takes some gigantic chances. It does some extremely ballsy things that, like I've already warned, is going to divide people all across the map. You're going to have people that adore what this movie does for being so unique and wild and fresh. There's going to be people that despise what this movie does because it is so against the grain of what a templated traditional Halloween film has been historically. But I'm somebody that whenever it's a franchise that I don't have some serious emotional shackles to, like the Nightmare on Elm Street or the Child's Play franchise, I appreciate whenever these movies decide to do something bold and unique. Sometimes they don't always pay off completely, but I like when the franchise does a big swing. I can appreciate when you get a Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 or a Halloween 3 or what this movie does. And so I don't know what the majority is going to be. I really think it's going to be all over the map, and I'm eternally curious to see what the initial reactions are going to be this weekend. But I at least appreciated the fact that I walked into a movie that did things that I would have never been able to predict. Moving on to the mixed. The main one here is the character of Corey Cunningham. Now, those of us that have been in the horror community, online, we have heard rumblings about this character for a very long time. I've managed to stay away from spoilers. I don't know how successful the rest of you guys have been, but this is a very major character in this film. Arguably, he's the lead of the film. If nothing else, he's the co-lead with Laurie Strode. And there was things that they did with this character that I really enjoyed. I like the performance by Rohan Campbell. I think that he is a very capable lead for this movie. I was really engaged and interested and invested in the story that they were telling with this character. There's a lot of very direct homage and inspiration from one of my favorite Stephen King stories that kind of frames out the direction they're taking him, which I really enjoyed, something unique for this franchise. But unfortunately, by the third act of the film, where they eventually take his character, I didn't like at all. To me, it kind of amounted to nothing. All of the most interesting things that they set up with this character, all the biggest questions, all the biggest intrigue that they create regarding this character that is the forefront of this final movie, it kind of felt like they just forgot what they were doing with him, or stopped caring, or never really knew where they were going to tie him in with the third act. And so it just kind of feels like it goes nowhere. And it was one of the biggest disappointments with this film, to where I'm watching it and I know this character is going to be divisive. I know this character is going to turn a lot of people off hard, but I'm really enjoying it and I'm really liking how unique it is. And then where they decide to take it, I kind of feel like, well, fuck. Why did you even make me experience that then? This is the least carnage-filled of the three, and that's strange to me. I did not expect this to be as bloody or as gore-filled as Halloween Kills. I think that was obviously a middle chapter where they were allowed to just kind of go free with all of the carnage, but I would say that Halloween 2018 has more kills, better kills, and just a lot more interesting kills than Halloween Ends. And so if you guys come to a Halloween film for the carnage, I don't think there's enough for you. And aside from one standout kill, there's a lot of it that's kind of obscured in the background and not really a big focal point. And my final mixed aspect is that this film feels very unique to the other two films in this trilogy. And there's a part of me that likes that. As I said, I like when these movies go bold. I like when there's something different and unexpected and my expectations can be successfully subverted. But this feels very foreign to this David Gordon Green trilogy to me. You have Halloween and you have Halloween Kills that certainly feel somewhat like different films, but stylistically, they are very much kind of bookended with each other to where you can watch them as one film. They complement each other. There's characters in 2018 that have no speaking lines that are fairly major characters in Halloween Kills. There is opening and closing shots that are like this stylistic through line between those two films. And so it was very clear, they even said this, that this was intended to go along with that, but then when they sat on it during the year that the world was locked down, they decided to second guess themselves and change some things and add a time jump and retool the script and go with some new ideas. And so you have two films that feel like, they're one night, they're one vision, they're one filmmaking crew, and this film almost feels like a completely different creative crew took over for the franchise at this point. And so it was interesting to see some different directions, some different music choices, some different font choices, some different stylistic choices on how to open and close the film and the direction of the movie. But at the same time, it's going to make this trilogy a really fucking weird, jarring watch when two films feel like one and then one feels like this distant other thing. I think that the time jump in this movie was a mistake. I understand what they were trying to do as far as where to place the Laurie Strode character, but I feel like they created a lot of questions and a lot of issues as far as logic in regards to where certain characters have been for 4 years and how things have transpired from 2018 into the timeline of this movie, which is current day. And I don't feel like the ends justified the means as far as altering your original idea to make all three of these movies take place in one night. I still think that would have been the better idea. And now moving on to the negatives, I don't know why the hell they decided to go the direction they went with this movie. Now, again, I like when these movies decide to take some risks, but I don't know why they took risks with this. I don't know why they decided to do these gigantic swings with this when literally all they had to do was land the plane and they would have had one of the most satisfying trilogies as far as fandom goes. And they decided to just go bold and go really divisive with the directions that they take. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever why they would risk the reception of the fan base and the reception of the critics to do something unique in a trilogy that was marketed and sold from the beginning as getting back to the basics, getting back to that original vision of the first film, getting back to, the quote-unquote glory days of the Halloween franchise. I just don't know why the hell you would get people on the ride of that and seemingly succeed with most of them just to risk letting most of them go in the concluding chapter. It really feels like this movie was never a part of the plan. Now, I did some research. I know when they pitched Halloween 2018, David Gordon Green and Danny McBride originally wanted to pitch two films and film them back to back, but they decided not to, just make Halloween 2018, see where it succeeds, and if it succeeds, then we'll start talking about the second film. And it really feels like that second film turned into Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, and there's just not enough story, there's not enough meat on the bones of this storyline that they're deciding to explore to make two films out of that. Because you had one film that was all carnage, little story, very little character stuff, and then you have this movie that is just so weird and wild and strange that it really feels you could mash those two movies together, take the best ideas from Kills, the best ideas from Ends, and you could have had a 1-2 punch that would have knocked this fan base on their ass. But they decided to go the greedy route and turn two films into a trilogy. And there are huge casualties in this movie in the writing department for those reasons, to where you have some of the most interesting and bold, unique ideas that they bring about in this movie that feel unexplored by the end because they're just introduced and then they spend no time actually diving into them in the film. And then the thing that we're actually here for, the thing that they're selling this movie off of with the posters, with the trailers, with the fucking name of the movie, which is Laurie and Michael Myers, their gigantic feud coming to an end. That side of the movie feels like a tacked on afterthought.
Come and get me, motherfucker.
The third act of this movie is the weakest act of the film, where you finally start to get some of your conclusions regarding the Corey Cunningham character and how this ties back in and what answers are they deciding to give regarding Michael and evil and all of these themes that we've been exploring for 3 movies now, and starting to really get into the action-packed side of Laurie versus Michael. That's where this movie took a nosedive for me. And that's the most important fucking part of the movie. The actual fight, the actual battle, the actual final confrontation between these two iconic characters, in my opinion, weak, anticlimactic, short. And so you have this concluding chapter, this end of this timeline of the franchise that I just feel like is an absolute mess by the end of it, because all of these gigantic swings that they take, they don't fully explore or land well enough to sell a lot of us on them. And then you have the actual central concept, the whole point of this movie, that isn't entirely satisfying in and of itself, because it's not the focus. It's not the actual focal point of the story, and when it becomes the focal point of the story, it feels rushed. I do think there's a good chance that this movie is going to find its fan base. It is going to have a bit of a cult following over time. This is one of those films that's going to be divisive as all hell right out of the gates. And then over time, people are going to start to settle into their camps of, I love that movie and I hate that movie. And there's going to be very few people that are able to sit in the middle like I am, to where there's so many things about it that you appreciate, but at the same time, there's so many things that just baffle and frustrate the living shit out of you. But regardless of where this movie falls over time, I'm pretty confident in telling you that for the most part, it is not the knockout final concluding chapter of this trilogy that it could have been. So all in all, guys, this is a movie that I would say I enjoyed overall. I liked some of the bold directions that it took. I liked the fact that it went in places that I would have never predicted in 100 years that this concluding chapter was going to take. But I was just extremely disappointed that they didn't land the plane with those new ideas, or even with the central idea of Laurie versus Michael. So it ends up being another messy chapter that I'm very mixed on in this new trilogy. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed this, please click over here for my playlist of Halloween reviews. I've reviewed every film in this franchise, and I'm also going to put my most recent Halloween ranking up here, which will be updated in a couple of days. Please like and share and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the plethora of Halloween content coming your way over the next couple of weeks. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.